Was that a yes on the 15th?
Yeah.
Oh, all right, thank you.
Yep. No problem.
First day of
Tommy, I gave you water.
That's
That's all right, drink two. Can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is to advise those present at this meeting of the Board of Education of the Pinelands Regional School District in the County of Ocean that adequate notice of this meeting was provided in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act. The notice has been posted in the Board of Education office, junior high school, and high school buildings. The notice was also mailed to the Press of Atlantic City and filed with the municipal clerks of Vassarwood Township, Eagleswood Township, Little Egg Harbor Township, and the Borough of Tuckerton. Roll call, Steve.
Mr. Bonacke. Mrs. Chambers.
Here.
Ms. Hannadel.
Yes.
Mr. Kubricki.
Here.
Mrs. McVeigh.
Here.
Ms. Palladino.
Here.
Mrs. Paklakua.
Here.
Mr. Williams.
Here.
And Mrs. Ernst.
Here.
Have a quorum.
Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have an agenda.
All right, next on our agenda is the budget hearing for the 2018-19 year. So, Steve, I'm assuming you have a overhead.
Sure
Can't
do.
believe there's some,
I know.
It's gonna be a habit.
huh?
It's gonna be a habit.
Hopefully they're listening on Facebook. Usually the budget is of interest to them.
You gotta get a little closer to it. You gotta get a little closer to it.
Gotcha.
It's like right here is where the.
Looks like we're about ready to go. Before we jump into the budget, I just want to thank all the staff and administrative team. This is really their budget. I'm just lucky enough to kind of narrate it for them and assemble it. But it's been a cooperative effort with everyone involved. A lot of hours. Our budget committee of the board put in a number of hours to get this to where we're at today. So I appreciate the board giving me the opportunity to present the budget. And here we go. The budget is really a 365-day process because we're always assessing the financial impact of our decisions. So is the budget supporting what the initiatives were when we originally created the budget the year before? So we'll be doing this from July 1 through June 30th just to make sure I make smarter decisions as we go through the years. But the real construction of the budget from a process standpoint begins in December. Our administrative team gathers the information that they need, submit budget requests via our financial system, and then in February we kind of develop into a rough draft through discussions with the board to come up with a working document. And then between February and tonight, we're working on refining that budget to get to acceptable level. This year we ran a little bit later than normal. We've always given the budget presentation around now, but the budget prep was delayed a little bit because of the new governor transition, and he delayed his state aid address, so it kind of bumped us back a couple weeks. But we're still here presenting the hearing tonight, so if you have any questions, feel free to jump in. After we close the budget hearing, that's going to be the budget that's voted on next week in our regular meeting. So once the budget hearing closes, no more changes can be made. All right? To understand next year, we have to talk about this year. So this year, we saw an increase of, tax levy increase of 1.5%. We did see a decrease in state funding. So the state gave us money and then took it away at the start of the year. So that was an unexpected decrease. And we did decrease staffing levels for this fiscal year. And this year, we saw our energy savings initiatives, excuse me, really come into play. We've got just about wrapping up that project, a $5.4 million capital improvement plan that upgraded our systems, a boiler in a high school and air conditioning in the junior high. That's probably what most people notice because the rest was lighting and kind of invisible to everybody else. So the theory behind that is we're able to increase our infrastructure with a budget neutral option, which decreased our energy consumption, but then we picked up the debt to go along with that. So we're wrapping that up. And then also too, we're kicked off our referendum, our projects. And our next step is really the big one that's coming into play within the next couple of months. So we'll be working alongside with that. The 18-19 budget appreciates the taxpayer burden. The debt that relates to the referendum is kicking in 18 and 19. So the Budget Committee made a concerted effort to make sure the impact of our operations is as minimal as it can be, thinking that there's already an increase for the taxpayer coming up. We have some facility challenges. We all are definitely familiar with those. We're going to be closing the high school, as you know, for next year, and we're partnering with Little Egg Harbor to accommodate our students between the junior high and Little Egg Harbor. We do identify efficiencies. We have, Pinelands takes an approach that it doesn't matter whether you're in first grade or a senior in high school, you're all Pinelands because you're coming. So we're very interested in how the sending districts operate. So we partner very well with them. And then we just obviously addressed our infrastructure concerns over the last year. We provide for instruction. We have estimates of our staff. Our current collective bargaining agreement expires June 30th, 2018. So we have a conservative estimate for next year. We made some aggressive estimates towards special education. Those of you that have been in budget presentations, special education is such a volatile part of education that it's very predictable, but we chose a little bit more aggressive route with the understanding that we need to be as conservative as possible for next year. We are delaying some advancement and some replacement technology because next year is really probably the biggest unknown that Pinelands has experienced. We're shutting down a high school, we're putting students here, we're adding classroom units, and we're having students in another school. So what is the financial impact of all that going to occur? We could estimate too high or we could estimate too low. So next year is extremely uncertain. And we have cost savings initiatives. We have a very good transportation system, and as a regional, to be able to partner with your sending districts and still be at the top, you're competing with K-12 districts that have one transportation department. We have 5, and we're able to work very well together to be one of the most efficient transportation systems around. We do cooperative purchasing agreements wherever possible. We partner with not only our schools in Pinelands Regional, but also throughout the state, so we get the most bang for our buck with that. And very similar with the shared service and the joint insurance funds. The bigger the pool, the better the efficiency of those costs. With this, I will pass it off to my partner, Dr. Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. This is a little bit digging deeper into the educational priorities because when we submit the budget, we have to have a statement of priorities that are approved by the county office. And those statement of priorities must be able to support the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, which is the curriculum that guides our school district. So we do have that in place, and we have all of the upgrades that we need to be able to institute all of those learning standards. The other big piece from the State Department is we have to be able to support interventions for our academically at-risk students, our English language learner, gifted and talented in special education. So we still are supporting that via some federal funds that we have in Title I and some local funds that we use to support our intervention teams, which are doing a great job, by the way. And also, you have to be able to support your professional development plan, and ours is definitely focused on differentiated instruction. That's teaching to the different levels of students that we have. And our response to intervention, which really speaks to the interventions that I had mentioned earlier. That's the basis for how we are supporting those interventions. And then our staff work in professional learning communities, and we do provide that with this particular budget. There were a couple of concerns that were raised when we had our meeting at the county office, and some of the problems would be the sustainability of the programs because we've had 4 consecutive years under the 2% cap. And then we're not using the banked cap. You get to the banked cap when you reach the 2% cap, and we have not done that in 4 years. And the other concern that we have, I think as a group, and we discussed this with the board, is are we underestimating some costs? So it's a little bit risky in the fact with special education, some of the costs that we may not anticipate with closing the high schools, such as moving expenses, boxing things up, all those sorts of things, transporting everywhere and doing all those types of things with the closure of the high school facility. Use of the constituent facilities, I guess with the performing arts, our athletic facilities that we might need, and obviously with the use of Frog Pond. Again, all of those estimates that we have from there, they're estimates. So we could be underestimating cost, and with transportation, one never knows because of the way the bus tiering has to operate, whether or not we're making a guess based on what we do this year, and we're hoping that that repeats next year. So those are costs that we may be underestimating a bit, so it's a little bit of a concern. We have paused some things for the future, and I want to emphasize paused. Security personnel, we had planned to add, or at least budget for adding a security person that was hired by Pinelands Regional outside of the school resource officers. But since all the students are going to be mostly housed in the junior high school, we felt that with the 2 resource officers in one building, that would suffice some of the security concerns that we have and needs. So we would recommend in the following year budget that we keep looking at that security personnel, because there will be some initiatives coming down from the states and changes of security from the State Department. And then the other piece is the junior high school, the technology one-to-one initiative. We're going to just pause that a little bit also. The junior high school, since it's going to be housing grades 8 through 12, we're going to be consolidating all of our technology devices from the high school and the junior high. So we're technically going to have a lot of technology in one single building, which helps us in some ways. So, and then Frog Pond, obviously, we're going to have to ship our own devices over there. And then hopefully in 2019, we again reinstitute looking at the one-to-one plan. Back to Mr. Brennan.
All right. With all those initiatives and the narratives that we came up with, we had to assign dollars, obviously, to have to come up with a budget. So this portion of the budget are reflected in this handout that you have. Obviously, much more detail. This is just a more simplified version of it, but feel free to refer back and forth. And all that information, obviously, will be on our website. But here you're seeing our expenditures and our increase over the last 2 years. We're seeing about 2.1% increase in our expenditures over last year. This slide, it's not to be an eye chart. The purpose is to show you how much of our budget is really uncontrollable. It's a fixed cost. When you factor in salaries and benefits, and then you consider transportation and tuition similar to salaries and benefits because you're just outsourcing that part of education, you're looking at about a 90% fixed budget. So when you get to the 10%, you can even argue some of the facility needs, the supplies and things like that, even constrains the budget a little bit more. So when you take large swings at budget reduction, you really got to be careful that you're not affecting programs. And those were kind of the concerns that were raised earlier in the presentation. Here is just a breakdown of where we come up to how we fund the expenditure side of the budget. You'll see a tax levy increase of 1%. Again, this is the 4th year we're below the 2% cap. We're utilizing fund balance. We're actually increasing it a little bit. The fund balance is surplus, and it's accumulation of the unspent budgets of previous years. So that needs to, we have to carefully watch that because it is a little bit higher than what we can sustain. For example, this year we were cut over $247,000 in state aid that we didn't anticipate. So that ate into our surplus. So the theory is we need to generate that if we're going to use it as a source of revenue. So that's a very close eye part of the budget that we watch. The proprietary fund, our shared services actually generate income for Pinelands. So our relationships with Bass River and Eagleswood generate income. And the theory is it's compensating the other districts for the use of their employees to provide business services, technology, child study team services. So throughout the years, again, you're accumulating money in that fund, so now that we can use that to support the budget. And then obviously you're seeing the state aid increase. Don't be fooled that it's an increase over last year. Remember, we were cut $247,000. So really, this is just the restoration of aid that was previously taken from us. And then the miscellaneous interest is, I have to budget a certain amount of interest, and those of us who have bank accounts know there really isn't much interest in the bank account. So that's more of a requirement than anything else. The purpose of this slide is to show you that the yellow line is our expenditures. The red line is the tax levy. You see how it's a very smooth line. And then the blue line down at the bottom is our state aid. If you could send that all the way out to the right, you'll see that the blue line is getting farther away from the yellow line, which means the local taxpayer is picking up more and more of the budget each year. And that obviously has a big increase, a big impact when you're dealing with a 2% cap and you don't have enough state aid to help support the budget. Here's where we're getting into the actual cost of how it's gonna affect your pocket. Bass River is seeing a slight decrease, but it's just basically a break even. Eagleswood, that's the same thing there, a slight increase. Little Lake Harbor, 1.3 cents. This is per 100 assessed. And unfortunately, Bass River has the largest impact to them going forward. And the succeeding slides will show you how that works.
Tuckerton has the largest increase.
Did I say Bass River? I'm sorry, Tuckerton, thank you. One of the confusing things about, complicated things about a regional is everyone shares the pie. And that pie slice changes every year based on enrollment and equalized valuations. So if we did not increase the tax levy $1, you would see fluctuations. So for example, Bass River would go down and Little Lake would go up and those natures. So you could technically not raise the budget a dime and taxpayers would see an increase based on that shift. And that's what this slide is showing. So you can see the decrease in Bass River of about 1%, same thing in Eagleswood, and it all shifted really to Little Lake Harbor. Now they're picking up. So if someone's dropping, it all has to add up to 100%. And in Tuckerton, stayed about the same. So once you slice up that whole pie of the tax levy, we then apply the rateable base, which gets us our impact, our cost impact. And as you can see, the Little Lake Harbor saw a significant increase in their ratables this year. That's what absorbed some of their costs. That's why you're seeing it relatively low. But Tuckerton proportionately didn't see an increase in the ratables as well. That's why they're much higher. Okay. This slide is just to kind of take all that and put it in plain language so you can see dollars and cents, what it adds up to. This is just the debt service impact. We thought it was important to show the public that the debt coming on is going for the new referendum, and this is the impact of that. So if you, on the far left column, you run down and find wherever your house is assessed, and then just slide across to the right to the tacker, and that'll show you the impact of just the debt service portion of our budget. But with our aggressive operating budget, you can see how that now shifted. This is the total impact of both our operating fund and our debt service fund. So that's how you're going to see. This is just more of this translation of this that cent impact into a little more of a real dollar impact of your assessed home value. So, everybody got that? Kind of hang out a little bit. I know this is usually the slide that everyone likes to see.
Are you sure this is the total?
That's the total impact, yes.
Could you flip back to the previous slide? So debt service,
If we
Eagleswood
didn't-
caught my eye. Eagleswood for debt service at a $350,000 home is $492. The next slide. You're saying combined
Right, because now you're,
is $1.58? How is combined less?
you're seeing a decrease in your tax rate. It's the shift of the percent share is now slid away from Eagleswood, in this case, into Little Lake Harbor. And when you factor that in with our the ratables. Okay. So some concerns going forward into the succeeding years of 1920, 2021. This is our fourth consecutive year below the tax levy cap. And when you're over 60, about a 65% funded, you'll see this 64% funded, you're picking up a lion's share. So if you're only increasing 64% of your budget, less than 2%, and you're having expenditures that obviously exceed 2% increases with health benefits, salaries, energy costs, and things like that, you're going to see how difficult that's going to become as we move forward. The state's not helping. That 64% will probably be 65, 66 next year, 70 in a couple more years. So that you're continuing to take on a larger portion of your budget in education. What the future holds, this is again beyond next year's budget, reoccupancy of the high school, the educational initiatives, the restoration of all that. Where's our state aid funding going to come from now? Is it going to be consistent, or is it going to fluctuate like it has in the past, or is it going to be flat? Rateable base, it seems to be recovering over the past couple of years, but that has a significant impact on your tax impact. And tax levy expectation, as you can see, 4 years below, it's going to be difficult to maintain that trend going forward. We're going to need to, unfortunately, have a tax increase in future years. This is just my contact information, if you don't have that already, but all this, again, will be up on the website. Feel free to email me, call me, and after you have a chance to digest some of the information. So, with that, questions?
You want me to go up there, or?
Either way, it's a hearing, so it's not
Right.
it's not like a public forum.
Well,
type
the
of
thing that jumped out at me, I mean, I obviously didn't study the whole thing, was with building, cleaning, maintenance, supplies, and repair. Now, my first thought was, my God, we need a lot of that, and we're cutting. But then the second thought was, we're only going to one building all year, so we should be cutting more if we're not doing all that. So please explain to me why there, with what everything that's going on, how the impact came out to that it's a $42,000 cut in the building area. I don't want to pick apart every little thing, but that's just something that jumped out at me.
No, that's a good question. Keep in mind, we're still going to have facility costs for Little Egg. We're going to have to pay them for the use of their facility.
Right, okay.
So think of the theory as we still have the kids,
Right.
and they still need to be housed, so those costs really kind of go
Okay.
with them. The cost is just shifting on what we're using it on.
Okay.
So instead of buying supplies,
Right.
well, we're going to be reimbursing Little Egg for their supplies, that type of
Okay.
stuff. So that's why you're not seeing much of a change in the facility. Also, too, keep in mind, if we cut all of that cost this year, if we could, you're going to have a significant increase in succeeding year because you got to restore it all for the high school.
Yeah, my first thought was that we should have increased it based on some of the stuff that needs to be addressed, the little maintenance things. But then when we're really only working on maintenance for this building, then I understood it. I just wanted to, not only for myself, but for the people that didn't feel like showing up, that are gonna ask these questions later anyway. I figured it would be a good idea to get it out there.
Those were questions that we challenged within the committee. We challenged each other with to make sure that we had that accurate as much as we could. Again, it's still a very unpredictable budget,
Okay.
especially in that category, because it's an unknown.
I'm good. That was all I had.
I have a question. So since, I totally understand what you're saying with all the kids, basically the costs follow where they are. Since the high school's gonna be closed, will all the staff still have their jobs? Like do we have to let anybody go for a year, or like, are they all coming over? Like, I don't know, it's just a question, like, if you have nighttime custodians in both buildings, because are they gonna come here because there's gonna be more kids and more mess and more to do, or they'll be going to frog, everybody will still have a job, basically, is what I'm asking.
Well, we're still assessing that with our relationship with Little Egg as well.
Okay.
But yes, we do, that's the unpredictable part, because you're right, we're gonna have more kids in this building, which is gonna be a
Which
bigger
I feel like you're gonna
challenge.
need more people over here, and
Right.
you're gonna have relocate or whatever the trailers.
Right.
And, I just, there's a lot of people that work here that have really put a lot of time, and I'd hate for them to not have a job because we have to close the high school.
Yeah, those are kind of the tough decisions we're gonna be working on to make sure we minimize the impact as much as we can.
But if we stick to what's in the budget reflects no cuts in staff or programs.
Yeah, I didn't read everything real quick.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, but that's an important point. It's
Yeah,
fully funded
I
in the
just-
budget.
Because if we lose good people this year and then try to bring them back next year, they're gonna be somewhere else. So, that's good.
Yeah, that's the tough decision. All right, any other questions? Committee, anything you'd like to add? Budget committee?
Yeah. So I'd like to thank my budget committee, which is Mr. Kabuki, Mrs. McVeigh, and Mr. Williams. We did put in time, and the administration team was great. So I'll just emphasize the budget, talking strictly numbers in the budget, it does reflect no reductions to our staff or our programs. Special ed and transportation are always at the unknowns, but we took a consistent approach, which how we've done it the past few years. Budget, well, yes, this is our fourth year, I guess fifth year, under the 2% tax cap, which is why we haven't gone into using the full 2% as well as that banked cap. I think when we think of that, well, we also have to think of that we have been in recent years in a declining student population. Right, so we've been focused on, minimizing the impact on taxpayers as a priority. I will also just like to add that it does allow for a $300,000 lease purchase, which will require the admin team to prioritize our needs with regard to technology, and what they do with that, will be their final decision. They'll have those choices. And then the other item that has developed since the budget is the whole shared superintendent. So the superintendent is fully funded within the budget. So I don't know if there's anything else that anybody from the committee would like to add?
Superintendent is fully funded,
Fully
still on the
funded.
original.
In the budget. Because again, think back to February, March, when we were working through the budget, those decisions were still pending. We had to make sure that, whichever way the board wanted to go, that the needs of the district were supported.
I'd just like to recognize our chair of the committee who did, I think, a masterful job in terms of bringing together everybody and the different viewpoints and ideas to get a budget that reflects our concerns and yet provides a strong education. So Karen, thank you for directing us so skillfully.
I would also like to thank Karen and the administration for all their hard work. Wasn't easy. There was distasteful things, but that's what a committee is about. That's what a Board of Education is about, and the administration. So, but everything is fully funded. And again, as Mrs. Pakuakuha said, we do have a declining student enrollment, and that hurts us all the way around.
Anybody else have questions, comments?
Thank you, budget committee.
Yeah, I'm gonna thank all of you, Steve, committee, Dr. Stevenson, Karen, especially you, because I know you're a numbers person, so thank you for leading this. Great job.
The
Great
admin
job,
team
guys.
is good. We're working together.
And I know you put in a lot of time and a lot of meetings, so thank you. All of it. It's time consuming.
Okay, moving on, we will move to our discussion of the draft agenda for May 9th meeting. Some of the exhibits aren't open, but under approval of minutes, what is open there? Does anybody have questions or comments?
So I hadn't seen them yet. I guess they just came up today, so
Yeah.
I'll send any questions.
Steve, one thing on April 9th, executive session, I did not transcribe the minutes.
Oh, okay.
So don't give me credit for something I didn't do. Mrs. Chambers
Well, you
took
don't have
those.
to. There also needs to be an adjournment of the workshop on there as well. I see adjournment of executive session. There also should be of the workshop
And
itself
that was done,
that I
Steve,
submitted.
on what I sent you, so.
Yeah, okay.
I think it was 9:47. It was only a couple minutes after.
On the 9th?
Yes.
Yeah, because it was at the end of the meeting, and we actually adjourned the whole thing.
Sean, motion by Mr. Williams, seconded by Mrs. Papaku at 9:47.
Okay, is it on there? Because I didn't see it earlier. All right,
Yeah,
great,
it's on.
okay.
Maybe try his laptop, give him the tool. Wanna share?
Alrighty, moving down, let's just go to committee reports. Any questions there or comments by our chair and committee?
You know, there's three policies on for first reading. They were actually left over from our last meeting. I will go more into our last meeting when we get to the committee reports, but three of them are there for first reading. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at them, but if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email myself or Dr. Stevenson. Okay. Just a note on 9142, I want to make a note here. That entire policy was revised because it was so outdated. And we actually went with the policies from Lacey and Little Lake Harbor, so it pretty much mimics theirs. They are on the minutes, if you take a look, if you had a chance, all the choices were there, and this was the best that the committee felt, and we're asking that the board please approve this for first reading. The second one, 2415, is mandated, so there was really no choice there. And 0169, there was a paragraph added, I believe it was maybe the third or fourth paragraph, and that came upon the recommendation of school boards.
Thank you, Pat. Okay, the next couple, 2, 3, exhibits, out-of-district placements.
Are they new or existing students that changed?
I'm not sure, Pat, I can give you those answers.
Professional service providers,
So these are for next year, correct?
yes. The aide under personnel, will this person be replaced?
Yes, that is the one that's being replaced on the long-term substitute placement, 3B. When you roll down the,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
okay, yes.
all right, got it.
So are we on to human resources then?
Yes,
Or
we are.
personnel, sorry.
Yes.
So I have a question related kinda to that. So 1A is the resignation of that aide, but then under, hold on, let me find it.
3.
5D, we're suggesting that individuals serve as an after-school aide. Should he be removed from there?
Look into it.
So under 3B, that person is
Yes.
replacing the one that resigned,
Yes, 3B.
okay, all right, got you.
On item 4A, leave of absence, how is this going to impact the program for next year? Especially with the movement of that program? And I'm assuming we'll have to replace the person. I don't know how
Well,
staffing
that's
is program.
it's a very difficult one to replace because of the
Yes,
certification.
certs are
So we are advertising to
Okay.
try to replace the position, and we'll see what comes in, from the advertisement. And then based on that, we may have to make some alterations, with that entire program.
Do we know how many students will be participating yet? Has
Do
that-
not know.
Not yet, okay.
I'm sorry, is that a special ed? Because I don't recognize those.
No,
CS.
it's the Rainbow Express.
Oh, thank you.
Do we know what our current year's participation was with?
It was large, very large.
It's like 81 or something.
It's students, how many children were actually enrolled?
I don't know, that's what we're looking at now, to see what we can and can't do. Say for some case, we're not gonna be able to house that, there are some other options that we have out there. You know, and as far as the students taking the class, our students being offered, you know, if you take away that Rainbow Express piece of it, then that, you know, really, so we really don't know yet until we're testing the waters to see what kind of applicants we're gonna get in, and then we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
And that's gonna be difficult
Yes, it is.
with the cert.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's why I noticed it right away.
I'm under number 5, Dr. Stevenson, after-school aids. Could you be more specific, aiding in?
I'm gonna have to pass on that one and get the information back to you. I just know, I'm not sure.
Okay,
Okay, I have to look into it.
all right. And also, if they're acting at aids, they're being paid at a certificated person's rate.
Now,
Is
that's
that-
been historically done all the way back to the days when, our former special education director, because we went back and looked. So that
Okay.
$35 an hour rate has been there.
But they're not necessarily
I understand,
certified.
but that's what has been historically done.
So if I recall, maybe you can confirm, Dr. Stevenson, usually these are after-school aids for the special ed or classified students that are participating in after-school clubs
Activities.
and or
Yes.
Okay.
sports, where they might be required to have the one-on-one
Okay,
person.
all right,
So I don't know, maybe if you could just confirm that that's the
Well,
situation,
yeah, I will.
that'd be great.
okay. Hey, Joe.
I have an individual question on the reappointments, but I think we're gonna have to save that for executive.
My question for number 6, salaries, non-bargaining units, school-based youth services. Do we have any clue when the exhibits will be?
Well,
And
we're
I
gonna,
could-
we're gonna be discussing that today.
Oh, we are?
Yes.
Okay, all right,
I
okay,
have those, I have the proposals for you, which would,
okay,
Okay.
all right, that's
okay?
awesome.
Item 14. Oh, it was taken off. I wanted to know what a
We looked into that.
CPA officer was.
It has to do with the whistleblower,
Oh,
okay? And we're gonna be looking into it, we're gonna put it off, it's not mandated,
okay.
okay? But that's what it is, I didn't know either.
Oh, is it an acronym for something?
Uh,
No, I'm.
I'm sure it is. Yeah.
I was like, what is
It's
this?
the first time I've seen it, because I asked the question
Okay.
too.
Because I know it was highlighted.
Yeah, we put it, we kind
Before.
of pulled it off, and we're
Okay.
gonna look into it and see, but it's definitely not mandated,
Okay.
okay?
But, would we still, I mean, if it's a whistleblower type of thing, it sounds like it would still be something that would be good to have. Why would we necessarily remove it just because it's not mandated?
We'll look into it, Ms. Barkley.
Thank you.
Also on that same chart, specifically the chemical hygiene officers now, because there's gonna be 2 this year, as opposed to what we approved last year. And scrolling down, the right to know officer. Would we want the second individual under that category as well?
Yes,
Since it
it
has to
should
do
be.
with the same
Should
thing? I don't know.
The reason that they're separated is
Yeah.
because we wanted to make sure that, you're right, that needs to be on there, okay? The reason that that is done is because, Mr. Morgan deals only with the instructional staff, so
Okay.
we don't want him being approved and having to worry about checking all the cleaning supplies and
Right,
whatnot that's coming in.
maintenance,
Right, so it's gonna be all for mostly his science department, okay? Yeah, we'll make that correction.
Number 15, athletic event staff rates. I know we discussed this last year, about ticket takers, et cetera. And were we really spending more money, to have people sitting there taking the tickets than we were actually taking in?
Mhm.
So did we ever find anything out?
No, and I think what you're seeing on specifically, this isn't speaking to the number of people, this is just the rate they would be paid.
Correct.
Right. So whether or not there's a need, and again, that's gonna depend on, obviously, the site that we're using too,
Right,
I know some of the concerns, whether or not that ticket security person could be used as an additional security piece, which, and some of the concerns that come from the public with the after-school activities and the location of those. So if we set the table outside the gymnasium, it adds another layer of security.
right,
So that was a concern also, and it's something that we'll look into,
Okay.
for sure.
all right.
But they usually they're not there for the whole event.
No,
So
but-
if they're gonna be security, I mean, I would imagine we should require them to stay for the whole event. Because they're
Right.
usually there for the first quarter, perhaps the first half, and then
Then
they
they leave.
exit.
Yeah.
I also think it might be a nice community gesture. It would be nice to walk into an event and not necessarily have to pay. Especially to invite more of our community members in.
Do we take a lot of money in for this, Cheryl? Do we know, Steve?
Not really.
For, like events, like basketball games, that kind of stuff?
Varies with the event.
Right.
So we'd have to analyze all the events, what they take in.
Anything else there? Okay, going to report of the secretary, I'm assuming there will be transfers.
Yes.
I didn't have a chance to look at the bills list, I don't know if anybody else
No.
did.
No questions this time. On the bills list. Will there be bills added, I'm assuming? Yes, okay, because that
Right.
was a short.
Yeah, we basically do it on the 2 Fridays, so we'll do it, cut it off this previous Friday, and then we'll cut it off next Friday. So it'll be added.
Number 7, the MOESC, Coordinated Transportation. Is this something we do every 5 years? This is just normal?
It's a cooperative, we do the cooperative purchasing agreements.
Yeah.
For supplies, and it's basically the same thing with Middlesex Ed Services Commission for Transportation.
And we've already formed a cooperative with them?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I didn't know what it was.
It's just saying we can participate. It's, you approve the transportation
Right.
contracts for what we do with Durham, but this is really approving their
Okay.
contracts.
All right,
Because they're a school district, they're not necessarily a company.
With the disposal of books, I see we have volume of stuff on there. Looks like it's mainly from the high school library. But the ones that I have concern about are like the history and stuff, because history does not change.
a lot of those were VHS.
Well, there's 5 pages of VHS, yep, but you go down and there's books.
So there's 145 pages of items that are being disposed. They're all from the high school?
I'm not sure where they're all from, to be honest with you. It could be a combination of things. I know as we're getting ready to close the high school, we are asking everybody to purge. And I know that in the media center, they were looking at to see which of the books have been checked out. And some of these books haven't been utilized or checked out in years or never have. So I think that's what they were taking a look at, is cleaning out what we're not using and making room for other materials that we may or may not need.
What are we gonna do with all these materials?
Well, there are procedures in place for disposing of textbooks. We have to follow those rules and procedures for, you can't just throw out textbooks. You have to make sure if they're beyond 10 years, don't quote me off the top of my head because I haven't read it in a while, then you can discard them. There are other rules in terms of textbooks that you have in the building, in which I know for me in the World Language Department, we're gonna have to be purging all of our old world language textbooks because we don't use them anymore. We have new ones. But there are certain things that you have to follow through on that. And again, I cannot remember. It's been a while.
Well, you don't have to look because they're way past those dates. However, we're looking to offer them anywhere else or just,
I don't know. I know that they looked into it. That's what they followed the procedures that were given to them. Okay.
I think as a board though, if we not only approve the list of items, we have to approve how they're disposed of. So I would like that item 9 to indicate the nature of the disposal and just throwing things, again, if there are certain things that have to be disposed in a certain way, if there are flexibility in terms of how you can dispose them, who you can give them to, if you can have book sales for the public, if you can give them to libraries, if you can send them overseas, I mean, so I think that disposal
Okay.
of book items needs a way. How are we gonna dispose of these things? And we should dispose of them to make as much use of them as we can, even though we can make use of them, but somebody
Somebody else
might
could.
be able to make use
Yeah,
of them.
and I guess for some of these, there's at least 30 pages maybe of what I would consider history-related things, like the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln. I'm paging down, the Cold War with Russia, the U.S. Marine invasions. There's things that
Don't
they may
change.
not have been taking out, but I think it's important for our media center to have relevant history, the diplomatic history of the United States. I just feel like there's a lot of here. It might not be the most popular book for the students, but there's some history that I think should be maintained.
Why don't we just convert the VHS stuff, because it's
So
not
these are
used anymore,
textbooks,
to
it's not the
CD.
VHS. The first 10 pages or so are VHS.
Yeah.
I'm looking at textbooks.
I don't know whether there's a expense involved, but I thought the same thing, Jeff, like, some of those are classics.
Whatever happened to microfilm?
Microfiche.
Time Creek can still have.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. I'm on 40 pages of history.
Um,
40 pages of history? Yeah.
The, I guess what my question would be, and I understand purging, I understand, we're in a new world. I have there's something about books that I smell books. What criteria was used to determine what goes, I guess would be my question.
I have to ask those questions because I obviously delegated that out
Okay,
to
all
somebody.
right, all right.
Okay.
All right, so you'll get back to us
Yes.
on that. All right,
Thank
that's
you.
awesome, thank you.
The VHS stuff and everything, that's understandable. There's 5 pages of that.
Classics.
On the equipment lease, item 10, I know last year we actually had the list before this was approved. Do we have any type of a skeleton list possibly, or tentative list?
I sent
Right.
that question to Cheryl today.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Cheryl.
What generally happens is, once the lease is approved, then we get together with the amount of money that's in there. We meet with the administrators who budgeted for items that we move to the lease purchase, and then we prioritize that list. And we usually do that around in June or in May. So that we have the orders in place over the summer times that we can order them in. So generally speaking, that we haven't done that yet. Last year, we usually do it within the next month.
And
Okay.
once that's done, we'll be getting a list to
Yeah, and
approve.
then you'll have a list of the priority, because we have to sit down and figure out, where our needs are, take a look at our inventory right now, with the IT equipment and whatnot, and make those determinations. Okay?
I think that'd be the end. if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
It is. All right, let's go back then, if there are no more questions on the draft. All right, let's go back then to, old business committee updates. Buildings and grounds, Tommy?
Maybe Cheryl, sorry if you don't mind, did you want to start with, I saw there was a
Yeah.
community update on the website for those that are here and those that might be listening or watching on Facebook. Do you just want to give the highlights of that? I thought there was some good information related to the construction on there.
Okay. Obviously, we're going to be posting information to try to wrap everything off, to give you an idea as to where we are and where we're going. So we put together a newsletter that we are planning to do this week to make sure that the correct information is shared with the community. Correct information that's accurate and that is distributed by the school district. And I'll make that point very clear, that what you read is oftentimes not what was discussed at board meetings and what has been shared with this Board of Education. So, and in that update, what we did was we provided a very good summary of what is going to be happening for the 2018-19 schedule for next year, how we're using Frog Pond Elementary for our 7th grade staff and students. And the temporary classroom units, we don't have anything assigned to those yet because we're right now work in progress with the master schedule. Okay, so it's not going to be a grade level that's housed in there by any means. It's going to be probably a content area or whatnot. We haven't made those decisions yet. The kind of schedule that you're going to see, probably most likely, and as I said, we're working through this process now, is a traditional schedule of a 47-minute period because of the operation and the movement of staff that we're going to have between the 7th grade, Frog Pond, and with the junior high school. Okay, so that's in place, and also kind of give you a summary of what to expect for the summer activities and what to expect with the arrival of the TCUs, that you'll start to see that happening very shortly. Movement in the front of the building and getting ready to lay the foundations for and the footings for the TCUs, and also the work on the track and the stadium, or the track and the football field, which will be beginning shortly. Also, you're going to start to see mobilization with that. And I think that covers pretty much what's in there. But we will continue to do that as we move through and we get more information with regard to the schedules and everything else. But that's a work in progress right now because the course selections of our students went out. So right now we're building the schedule based on that.
That good? All right, Tommy, you have anything you'd like to add from our construction standpoint?
That basically covers it all, other than the fact that the schedules have been created for the site work for the athletic fields, the track, the football field, the tennis courts, and also a schedule has been presented for the TCUs that are upcoming, and there will be site work beginning with that soon also.
I just want to add that I think it's still a go that when we were in committee, I guess it was last Wednesday, was it?
Yes.
Epic, which is our new construction site managing company, will be sending something to Cheryl every week to say, okay, we did this week, and this is what's scheduled for next week.
Oh, that's good.
So that there will be a checklist as to, okay, this is what occurred, this is what's going to occur next week, and that will be put on our website so that the community is aware exactly what work is to occur on any given week. So, yes, much better communication. Anything else? All right, then let's move on to policy committee. Mrs. Chambers?
Yes, we met back before the last board meeting on April 12th. 3 of the policies are on for your approval for a first reading. So again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me an email or Dr. Stevenson. We have 3 that are still in need of administrative review, so we'll be taking a look at those at our next meeting. The board had directed the committee to look at 2 policies, the one on class size, 2312, which basically deals with academic programming. The board wanted some update or some information on clubs and activities in class size. So the policy really doesn't dictate to that. The committee talked about it, and the committee seems to feel that while I know you directed us to look at it, it's really a contractual thing with PEA because those are all stipends. So we really can't do away with anything because of a lack of participation because those stipends have already been built into the contract. So the committee feels that that matter should be sent to the budget committee to compare, okay, PA contract provisions and what's been set up in your budget. I know last negotiations, I know that was looked at very carefully, and I know you realigned a lot of those clubs and activity stipends into different categories. Maybe with the next round of negotiations, that needs to be looked at more carefully, maybe, to see if that there needs to be some changes.
So although my understanding, and please Steve or Dr. Stevenson fill me in if I'm incorrect, is that although it's in the PEA contract, that is if we hold the club, that's how much we will pay the advisor. It is a decision whether or not that club will host that club for the following school year. So just because it's in the PEA contract doesn't mean we have to fund fill all of those positions. Each position is funded in the budget. You know, we go through and for that long several page list, that's what's reflected in the budget, but it really is a board decision about whether or not we fill that position.
And they were advertised as pending adequate participation. We need, as a board, to set what adequate participation is.
Yeah, and that's a lot with the coaching recommendations.
Because that's also club, you know, and I think that's the question, are we running a club and there's 2 students in there? I mean, if there's, you know, active participation in the clubs, I think that's all great. You know, but are we running clubs where there's a handful of students? And if we didn't do that club, you know, would there be another avenue for those students to participate in, a similar club or something like that?
Well, I
That was
guess
really
what
the
would have to be
question.
taken a look at would be, and I'm sure the advisors have to hand in something at the end of the year, at least I think it was
They
required.
have reports they have to
Reports
present.
that they're handing in, and maybe there needs to be something turned in as well with what the participation was, so that can be
I
looked
think
at.
that's part of the report,
Okay.
yeah.
It's like I said, I agree with you per se, but at the same time, not having that information, we just can't create a policy. And like I said, they are stipend positions, so I think they'd be very upset if we said we're doing away with the math club or whatever, in the middle of the year when it's already a stipend position. And I think we have to remember too, that some of those clubs and activities, there are fewer kids like the math club because they are competing, so there might only be 5 to 7 students as opposed to Honor Society, which might have 15 to 35 students in it.
And I don't think anyone, so I'll speak on from what I've heard, I don't think anyone here is saying do away with the club mid-school year. It was really in kind of looking forward.
Well, or any club, you know, such as the math club, et cetera, that advances our kids academically. I think just,
We're running electives that are way under, or the numbers that we've already set, so it needs to be looked at.
But that does tie to, the electives would tie to the policy. The policy has class size.
right.
I think what Mrs. Chambers is saying is the policy doesn't address clubs and after-school activities.
So, Mr. Williams, when you said it needs to be looked at, does that imply it needs to be looked at by the board, or is that the discretion of the administration to look at those things and provide us with recommendations?
The administration to look at it, look at the numbers, look at, like they're saying, the math club may only have 6, 7, 8 kids, but they're a competition team, they don't, you know, want to grow more than that, that's, you know, the norm for those types of things, and they need to look at it and make a recommendation to the Board of Ed.
Who's the administrator in charge of, is it Mr. Hickman?
At the high school is Mr. Hickman and Dr. Clark.
So everything's turned into him then?
Yes,
The
and they
advisors?
have, you know, end of the year summaries that they have to complete, you know, with all the fundraiser information on there if necessary, you know, or anything like that. Okay.
So is that something then that once he collects that at the end of the school year, because I'm sure they have to turn it in before they get their stipend, is that something that could be put together for the board, that could be taken a look at maybe this summer to see?
Yeah,
what
I
we
think
want
so,
to do?
and remember, way back when, the participation in after-school activities was part of the strategic plan.
Mhm.
So taking a look at those numbers, you know, is probably a good thing to do, and it was planning on doing it because we're at the end of that strategic plan, so I think it's something that we can do for sure.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I was just gonna say, when it came up in budget committee, we weren't looking to cut their stipends. We were just looking to see maybe if something got stale,
Yeah.
maybe there's something else that could replace that, that would be.
More current kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, good point.
So once that's, collected, and maybe we can take a look at that as a board, and if there's anything further you want the committee to address, we can do that at that time, okay? The other policy that you asked us to do a little homework on was the cell phone usage, 4322, because of the amount of people, I guess you were over budgeted for what the payments were for cell phone staff. Dr. Stevenson is gathering that information. She is looking at who actually has and is being paid for that. So it is something we're gonna have to carry over into our next meeting. One thing we did realize, looking at the policy, which was under the 43 or 4,000s, that really addresses support staff. All the 4,000s address support staff in the policy manual. Your 3,000s are your teaching certified staff. The way the policy is written, 4322, it talks about admin, administration, and cell phone usage. So it was brought up that that should be its own policy under the 1,000s because that's where administrative
Right.
policy is addressed. So it's something that we want to take a look at our next meeting. It will be on the agenda. Like I said, Dr. Stevenson, she's going to collect who is actually receiving that stipend, and then we'll go from there. So we'll report back to you after the next meeting. And that is on the 17th of this month, and it is a morning meeting at 8:30. Unfortunately, I know not all the members can meet because of different schedules, but, you know, with everybody's schedule and trying to accommodate, it was the best scenario. So it's a Thursday, so if you have any questions, don't hesitate to send us your questions or inquiries, okay? So that's the 17th, 8:30, policy committee in the district.
I just want to, I did reach out to the ledge person at the school boards to ask her about that one policy that kind of doesn't affect us as much, the 21, it's about, which one is that, Pat, the one about
The one that's on the agenda?
yeah, the 2415 unsafe
2415,
school choice, just
yep.
because of the wording on sexual assault, and
Yep.
she's gonna get back to me
Okay,
tomorrow.
okay, all right. So maybe you can bring it to the policy?
Yes.
Which will occur after the first reading, so, but if any changes need to be made before the second reading, we can't change the language though.
I don't know what she's gonna tell me,
Okay.
it's gonna be interesting,
Maybe it'll just be a
just
clarification.
because it's so archaic, so.
Okay, any other questions? Does anybody on the policy committee have anything they want to add? Okay.
Go ahead.
Just, I wanted to add something back, circle back to the update that I sent out. And I want to make it clear that it is a full-day schedule. I repeat that, full-day academic schedule for the students of our junior high school, unless, for some unforeseen reason, that the TCUs would not be readily available on the first day of school, but that would be a temporary situation. So repeat, full day for students pending, as I said, if there will be any issues.
Can I ask
Full
a
day
question?
for junior high and high school.
Full day, grades 7 through 12.
Good.
Seniors, obviously, you have the option of leaving early because of the credit completion, in which we have many of our seniors who are taking that up. They're going into Jumpstart programs, taking OCC courses, and they're going to work. So our seniors, you know, because they have met credit, they don't have to fit and stay here a whole day. So that's an option for our seniors only. Full day.
Thank you for that, Dr. Stevenson.
Yes.
And I can assure you, the schedule for the TCUs shows they will be complete, ready, CO issued in plenty of time.
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood.
I actually wanted to ask something about policy as well. I know we have a staff member use of cellular phones. Do we have a student policy, and is that not covered by
It's in the
us, or
handbook.
is that covered by the administration?
In the
It's-
student
It's in
handbook.
the student handbook.
And it's all spelled out, and has that been looked at lately?
That's really a
Administrative.
administrative thing.
It's something that came up in one of my meetings this month in other schools.
About
Is there a
cell phones
concern in
by
that
kids.
area? Kim?
Yeah, apparently a lot of schools are just banning them out right now because there's just so many issues with kids using them in classes and texting and they've just found that there's just so much interaction with kids even in class that it's causing disruption.
Aren't some of the staff using them actually as part of the academic program?
Yeah, and that we use them for, as a search engine in the class if they're doing research in there. And, you know, that's basically what our policy states, is that as long as they're being used for instructional purposes in the classroom, you know, they can use them. You know, and again, you know, we don't have one-to-one devices for our kids, so those cell phones work out quite well for doing any research. Now, again, you know, there's issues with it, but only policy is as good as it's enforced in the classroom. You know, if a teacher, it's up to the teacher to, you know, maintain the control of that classroom with regard to that.
Great, thanks.
Okay?
Okay, last one under old business, communications committee, Kim.
Nothing to add since I kind of stated all this before. You guys can read it. I don't know if you have any questions, but we do now think we have a meeting on 5/15 at 5:15. How odd is that? So May 15th at 5:15, and I'll have Kelly put that out. Are there any questions on my rambling notes? Not, they don't look like Pat's notes, but they, it's just
So I have just one question in general.
okay.
So for the communication team, I did review your notes. And maybe, I don't know if you've solidified your objective or not, but I was wondering because last month I did the board goals update, and I know we had spoken, is an objective of the communication committee to work towards that communication board goal?
Well, it really came out
Or
of, it
possibly.
kind of out of frustration with the board and mostly around, you know, construction. So it wasn't specifically for that. I just went to Sue and said, you know, we're kind of the communications committee. So she and I met. Then we had a committee meeting, and since then Sue has dropped off, and so I'm going to have a whole new committee again. So we've only had technically one meeting. So I wouldn't say we've gotten very far in the goals, but I definitely looked at the goals, and I know we're going to be going over them. And specifically, sure, it's definitely got to work in there. It's just that, you know, was it built for that? No, it really
Right.
just came out of, you know, needing to communicate better and kind of developing it.
Okay.
I really think in the future, the Citizen Advisory Committee, the new policy that we suggested
Will help.
Revision on, I think it's going to help, because I think it'll include more of the community to get more involved and to help
great.
us.
Yeah.
And use the resources that we have out there. I guess when you meet again, is there any way, and I know this was brought up in policy, that maybe you can take a look at or discuss communication with Chief School Administrator, the admin and staff? And the other one, procedures and timelines for receiving Board of Ed materials.
I definitely have the first one. What's the second one?
Procedures and timelines for receiving Board of Ed material.
Okay. You think that's mine?
I'm just throwing it out there.
Okay. I know it's covered under policy, that's why I'm asking. But, I mean, we can certainly talk about it. We'll see what, how we
Well,
actually.
it's not a policy, it's just kind of a general consensus on when we do receive our working
I thought it was Sort of
information.
like that's, I thought it was a drop dead date was Friday.
Well,
Drop dead date was Thursday.
Oh.
Before.
Okay. Sure. I'll take any suggestions from anyone who would love to get to me
Might be
before the
inundated.
15th. I don't care. I don't care. We have, you know, we're at the beginning, so we might as well know everything up front.
Okay. Anything else? Any questions, comments more for Kim? All right, then let's go on to graduation. Dr. Stevenson. Isn't that where I'm seeing it? Under old business?
I think that was
Yeah.
just added.
Is that just added?
No, it's not for
No.
now.
No, it was there, it's just not
It's
I
there.
highlighted.
don't think it was in this.
Okay.
I handed out a schematic. This is very rough schematic of what it's going to look like. I know our administrative team, at the request of, I know our students were concerned, and I had brought this at the last working meeting, and at that point, you know, we had exhausted all efforts to look outside, and then we came across Ocean County Parks and actually renting a stage that could be placed, you know, on our school grounds. So our high school administration, I did not attend the meeting on Friday, but they met with Ocean County Parks to be able to bring in a stage. And on that schematic, this is the actual stage. And then what you see is a picture of the grounds. And you'll see, if you're looking at it front, that the side of the building was where we would normally come out for the parade out to the building. So the stage would be sitting directly on that roadway there. It needs to be on a hard surface platform, so that's why it would be on that roadway. And then this, you would see, we would be able to move our bleachers, our small bleachers around and set up the chairs like we normally would. And there was some suggestion that, you know, parents could bring their own chairs. I'm really not a fan of that, so we looked into, you know, renting an additional 600 chairs that we can do. That's $2 a chair. So right now it's like a work in process. We wanted to make sure that we had electrical capabilities to come out there, which we did. We confirmed that with Brant Hall, who's our acting facilities manager right now. So it's looking like this could work with the fence there. The only concern that I would have about it is to be able to secure the area. But we feel that that fence along the soccer field there would be where the entrance is to come in. There's an opening in that fence. So we could actually set out the entrance there, have people come into that, inside the fenced area where the chairs would be, and go from there. You know, our high school administration believes that it can be done. You know, we're gonna have to really think it out, obviously. As I said, as long as my concerns of being able to secure the area are met. You know, the only open area you would have is the space coming away from the woods, but the only thing back there would be the, you know, the roadway in, which we could bring in for the handicapped, you know, personnel to come, or handicapped visitors to come, and at least we would be able to seat them on that side closest to where they would drive around the back, if you know what I mean.
And you say secure as in secures attendees who have the
Yeah, and I
tickets
just,
for the
right, we
seating.
don't want an onslaught of people just, you know, coming in, and you know, with the field, we had that, the fence is there. So that prevents that from happening, so I think those are things that we have to take into consideration.
How high off the ground is the stage? Is this 13 feet? Is that
Yeah,
what it
it's,
is?
and actually, they'll be up higher, so if you're sitting flatline, you know, which what they would be, they're not in a, you know, in a bleacher setting, you'd be able to see because the students are gonna be elevated up.
Now, how does that stage compare to, we usually have a stage out on the football field?
I don't know, because I did not see it, I did not see pictures of it, I told you I wasn't at that meeting. Okay, so I can only go by the information I was given from our admin team. I think Mr. Bannon was at an event and actually saw the stage, which I didn't get details. Okay, but that's where we stand right now. They seem to think it was going to work. We did secure, and we have that stage on hold right now. We can always not, you know what I mean, but we do have it because we were afraid we weren't gonna be able to
Filled out
get
the
it.
paperwork.
Yeah, we're gonna be working on that, and, you know, and if we decide not to do that, then we're not bound by anything to do that. And I think the cost was pretty cheap. Yeah, I think it was,
Do we normally get the stage?
Just, well, yeah, I don't know where we normally get the other stage. We probably done that one too, I don't know.
Right, I'm thinking when we
Yeah.
normally have a stage out on the football
Mhm.
field.
yeah, as I said, I wasn't at that meeting, so I don't have the details on that, only what I've given from Mr. Bannon. So we'll look into the more details on it.
Did they also ask about additional bleachers?
We didn't ask about additional bleachers because we think that we have enough on the grounds to be able to move them around and use the seating. So with the chairs, additional seating and bleachers, we thought that we would have enough to move. And if we have to look into it, we will.
Sounds promising.
Yeah, you know what, my only question, I mean, if we can do this, this would be great. But the amount of effort and time it's gonna take to set this up, should we look at a rain date? In other words, if it rains today and graduation is tonight, we just move it to tomorrow. Because now, the way it's set up, if it rains,
We go inside.
they go inside. And it just seems like a lot of work and for our staff to do and a lot of logistics just to not use it. If we're going to do it,
Well, it's similar to what we would have to do normally in setting up for the football stadium. You know, it's the same amount of effort that's
Other
gonna
than the
be.
bleachers.
I think
but
that's a
what
good
I'm saying
idea.
is if, in other words, it's a rain date, because I know your other high schools that have large populations of seniors graduating, Southern, Lacey, if it rains, it's just postponed to the next day because they hold it outside regardless, because they can't house them. I mean, if we're going to go through all this effort, is that something we would want to look into? Especially if there's additional cost. If we're going to do it this way.
Project graduation.
Yeah, that's the
I
other
don't know.
issue.
Well, what do the other schools do? They have project graduation too.
Not all of them do, some, so it's something that we, I would defer that to our building administration, our high school administration.
I think you defer to the kids too. I mean, they're the ones who
Well, and that's who's been
are gonna
pushing for
graduate.
this.
Yeah.
I
They've
think
been
if
pushing
most
for it to be
schools,
outside, the
Yeah.
The
students.
students, sure, every student, graduating high school wants to be at an outside time. I mean,
Yeah.
I try to put myself back in those high school days, you want to be outside at a facility.
I think if
Very
most schools could, if it rained, keep it on the same date and move it inside, they would. Since we are able to do that, that gives us that option. I think other schools that have more students than they can house inside, that's their only option. I think keeping it on the same day would be the optimum situation.
Now, you know, you
As
have to
long as the call is made early in the day.
Do we know if project graduation's safe at this point anyway?
I don't think we're gonna be able to go to the site, but I'm not sure, so we have, the backup plan would be having it here on site,
Thank you.
okay?
Yeah, because it was scheduled.
Yeah, and
Already.
yeah, it's a Friday night.
That Friday night
Which is,
thing.
it's really not a good idea, we don't control the calendar, you know, obviously it snows and we have, you know, a lot of things happen that when graduation ends up on a Friday night. You know, you'd rather have it on a Monday or a Thursday because then you have more availability of that for project graduation.
That could be fun.
Anything else? Thank you.
I'll keep you posted.
Okay, under new business, we have been taking time to discuss at least one of the tenets of the Code of Ethics for the Board of Education. Last month we skipped to 8. So in reality, if we're going in order, we would be on number 3, which is to confine our actions to policymaking, planning, and appraisal, and help to frame policies and plans only after the board has consulted those who will be affected by them. Anybody have comments or suggestions or something that we're just not doing right?
This is the most frustrating and ambiguous of the items. And I still do not know, certainly I know we confine our activities to policy making. We have a policy, so that's an easy one. But I haven't found anybody to tell me what our particular planning function is and what it isn't, and what our particular appraisal function is and what it isn't. What areas should we engage in planning and what areas are the purview of the administration? What should we appraise and what shouldn't we appraise? I mean, we have those two, planning and appraisal, and I'm not sure what the heck we should be doing in those two.
I'm not sure I can help there either. I think in some ways we did just do some planning. When the suggestion made in planning for graduation, you know, can we look into these different things to see if we can do it outside? Our administrators then went and met with these people, so I think that's part of the planning. Appraisal, I'm not really sure, but if you would like me to basically see if Jane or Mary Ann have information on exactly how school boards do that planning and appraising.
Anybody else before it?
Yeah, and they'll be here for,
They will
that's
be
our
here
May
May
23rd
23rd,
session
yes.
to go over the Code of Ethics with
Yes.
us, right? And
Like
answer
one
So
of
that's a
the
good time to
things-
get it settled.
one
I'm
of the-
sorry, Kim.
Yeah, that's all right, I'm sorry to interrupt you. One of the things that I read recently, and I don't know if you guys saw it, honestly, I read so much, I don't remember where I saw it, but it might have been in the School Boards magazine. But that we're supposed to be looking, the school board, here's the administrators, and here's us, and we're supposed to be looking out and up, and they're supposed to be looking down and in. And the thing is, we're not supposed to be doing anything that affects down here. We're supposed to be pointing up always. So the vision is to where we're going and the big picture, but never details.
How it's done.
Exactly.
And I think that's what Mr. Kubricki is saying is the planning, the vision, and where the district is to
So I mean, that's what I'm
go.
saying, maybe we can talk about that specifically, because it's obviously, the appraisal has to be in the big picture. It can't be, you know, is this the right stage to use, or is this the right place to have, you know, the
No,
graduation?
that's them. Right.
That's them. So
Right.
it becomes a discussion with us as to what that looks like.
I think, did you say
Does
that
that make
we're
sense? I don't
about
know. I mean,
to
I'm just
start
saying what I
on
read.
a new strategic plan?
Well, that would be up to, yeah, the platform and whatnot would be decided, because we're at the end of 2019 ends the existing.
The end of 2019?
2019. Remember
So, I
those
mean,
days?
I remember those days.
You're the newest on here. Like, how do you see that, like the appraisal thing? It's always interesting to see how other people, especially new people.
I'm kind of confused with it myself with how we're supposed to handle most of those. You get a lot of questions from outside, and it has more to do with micromanaging than it does to do with policy appraisal and planning. And it's tough to answer them, because really, that's the administration who does it and does it well, but you're coming to us.
Right. You mean from, like in the community?
Right. So
That's-
it's, you know, and then when you give them the answer of, well, that's kind of not why we're here, it's more, you know, go Dr. Stevenson, they
Right.
kind of, you know, it's a little hairy sometimes.
But I think having school boards and give us a particular direction in the planning, I mean, does our vision include a plan for the educational movement of the district? Does our planning include a vision for the athletic progress of the district? A vision, which is then, you know, in what areas is that planning taking place? In what areas is that appraisal taking place? I think we have to have a really strong discussion at the May 23rd meeting about those functions. So we don't, you know, so we don't give up our
And I think a good
responsibility.
example is, and I don't know where this came up, we were talking about, you know, that there used to be a reporting to the state for our IT, but there isn't, you don't have to report to the state, or you don't have to send in that anymore, right? It used to be every 3 years or something.
Technology thing?
Yeah. You don't have to do that.
Why not?
So,
They just don't need it
I don't know, because the state doesn't want it. I
No,
don't
they
know.
stopped
So,
requiring it.
right, we have a technology plan, I guess, don't we? We
have a
do.
vision, yeah.
Have a vision.
And it's, all right, but it's those things we need to know.
Those things we need to.
Right, I agree. All right, I will make sure that I send a message out to Mary Ann, make sure she's got that on her list.
Is Mary Ann doing it?
Mary Ann is doing it as far as I know. Jane may be able to come, you know, Jane's not doing, you know,
Still?
yeah,
Oh, that's
so.
too bad.
All right, moving on, we are going to our residence forum. This is on agenda items only. I will not belabor only 3 minutes because there's only 4. So if anybody would like to speak on agenda items only.
They made me. Oh, no place to sign in. That's all right.
I wrote your name
Jamie
down.
Carnes, yeah, wrote me down. All right, a couple things. Not really that many things. Number one, I'm appalled at for a budget presentation, the public, I mean, all the complaints, all the stuff, and they're not here. And from what I understand, there's 6 people watching on live stream, something like that. It's absolutely disgusting. I'm calling the public out. I don't care who knows it. It's disgusting that people do not want to be involved. They just want to run their mouths. So, having said that, I did notice on the agenda that there's a PLA or project labor agreement for the construction projects. I'm so happy that you guys are on board with that because that's going to cut down a lot of the issues and situation. I'm glad also with the graduation that it can be worked out here. I know it's been kicked around that's what the students want, and it seems like it's more cost effective than renting any other space. I do like the rain date idea, but again, I don't understand the logistics of it. And such, and anything else you want before you? Okay, no, that's it. I just want to make sure, you know, the whole line of people behind me. All right, so that's really all I have now. Okay, yeah. For next year, we decided on a start and finish time for the 7th through 12th graders, since it's all going to be the same.
The calendar, yeah.
The date, no, the time of day.
I don't quote me on the start times because they're still moving around,
Right.
but I'm thinking that somewhere at 7:25.
Okay.
Okay, so I think it's pretty similar to what we're running now, but don't hold me to that because again, we may have to juggle some things around.
Okay.
So that the busing works out with the elementary schools.
Got it.
Okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
So I have a question about agenda items, because I'm not sure if I can ask it.
If it's on the agenda, you may ask it.
Is there a referendum on the agenda?
No.
So she can
But-
wait until
Construction.
after.
You can
Yeah,
wait
we have
for-
another one.
We have another public
Yeah.
forum.
About a minute
If
and
you
a
want to
half.
ask it then. Anybody else on agenda items? Alrighty then. So I guess what we need to do right now is, Steve, you need a motion?
Motion.
But what is it?
Item number 10, project labor agreement, construction projects.
Do we have a second?
What was the motion?
To approve.
Motion to approve.
I didn't hear the motion. To do what? What are we approving?
Entering into a project labor agreement for construction projects.
Okay, then the motion is said.
And Pat, you seconded it?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any discussion?
Thomas, can you just
Give us a-
summarize simply what that entails
That's what I
and
do
what
for
the
it.
expectations are?
Well, what it entails is that not only will we be using union contractors, we will be using union employees. We could get a better pool of employees, even though we would have to pay the rate, the union rate to anyone that was here, even non-union members, we would not be getting union members. So I think the pride that they will have with coming here and doing this work, along with whatever contractors are awarded that bid. And on top of that, you're talking $40 million worth of work we have yet to have done. And with all the problems we've had, everything that is going on, we don't need picketers here also. But I think it brings a good quality of worker to come do these jobs that we have at $40 million of taxpayers' money.
So where did it come from? The suggestion, was it from the attorneys? And why didn't we have it before?
It was also from Epic, but it was also our attorneys. Steve, maybe you want to jump in here because you really sat through that whole meeting.
And that's basically it. Our Epic Environmental suggested it, and then the attorneys reviewed the resolution and proposed that resolution for us to use. And then what'll happen is the bids are actually out for advertisement right now, so you can issue an addendum, and on the addendum, it'll have this project labor agreement, but similar to what everyone says. So, but there's no downside, you still have to pay prevailing wage, but what this is, it kind of secures the quality of labor that you get, from what I understand.
So Steve,
And they just didn't think of it before? I guess, I just
guess
didn't.
the other
It
management
was
firm.
the management firm, okay.
So as you noted, the bids are currently out. I guess those are the bids that we approved at the prior meeting for the athletic complex?
That's done.
This one,
No, the athletic complex is already bid and awarded, and they're moving forward. This is for the masonry bid and the high school and junior high school renovation.
so it says additions and renovations. So the athletic complex would not, because the bid is already out, would not be bound to this? And will it delay the bids that are currently out?
From what we're told, this is gonna go in an addendum. We had a pre-bid meeting on
Wednesday,
Wednesday, and
Thursday.
that was for the renovation portion. The masonry bid was earlier, the week earlier. But the project labor agreement, the committee had met and discussed it and was gonna recommend it at this meeting. So at least in that pre-bid meeting, all the contractors that were there were apprised of the pending project labor agreement. And what they'll do is they're gonna issue an addendum to the bids for all the questions that they received, and in that addendum will be this agreement.
Question, was there an estimate as to what this labor management agreement how it will affect the cost of the bids and the project? Do we have any estimate?
From what I understand, it's not supposed to affect the cost, because even if you don't use union labor, you still have to pay the prevailing wage, the labor.
Even
union.
without this agreement before?
Yes.
Okay.
Now we're using only union people.
So what you're doing is, okay, you're gonna be paying, like, be wrong, but the way it's explained to me, you're paying prevailing wage whether with union or non-union people, but what you're doing is now saying, okay, we're requiring that if you're paying the prevailing wage or you're doing on contract, you're gonna get the union.
So the roofers who did our job before, and if they employed non-union members, they had to pay a prevailing wage, or they could pay whatever they wanted to.
Prevailing wage.
They did have to.
By law, it's supposed to be prevailing wage in the state of New Jersey for government projects. However, it's required, that's what we paid, what they paid is on them.
Number 3, do I understand this, that the way it's written here, that because it's flexibility with work scheduling and shift hours, that they could be doing this job sometimes during the night?
Shift 2, wasn't it?
Oh, I
guess.
see what you're saying, permitting wide flexibility in work scheduling.
So they could be working 24/7?
If need be to meet timelines.
Okay.
That's the way I understood it.
Any other questions?
And so you see no downside to this, Steve? Is there any negative
I reserve
downside?
Answer to when we're done.
I wouldn't be surprised here.
Well, from what I understand, it really, there is no downside because you're in a situation as far as cost goes. And this is just kind of solidifying the quality of labor that you get, so we may not run into the problems that we had before with some of the quality that we receive.
And it's very, very common, and even projects much smaller than ours, that this occurs in government work, that you enter into a PLA, and many of the school districts also do, on top of all the other government jobs that go on.
Okay.
Is that it? Are we all ready for roll call? Okay, Mr. Ronicky,
Yes.
Mrs. Chambers,
Yes.
Ms. Hannadel,
Yes.
Mr. Kabricki,
Yes,
Mrs. McVeigh,
Yes.
Ms. Palladino,
Yes.
Mrs. Pakwakua,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
Mrs. Ernst.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, moving on to number 11, which is our second residence forum. This does not necessarily mean you have to speak to the agenda. If you have something you would like to say, or please
Say whatever you want.
do so.
Talk about it. Pretty much, you can talk about anything you want. Talk about the quality of council.
Kim
Not
Farrow
anything.
from Eagleswood. So I'm really happy about this PLA thing, I think, but I'm curious to know why we didn't do this last year, because that really makes me have a stomach ache now. That's so upset. I'm glad that moving forward, that hopefully we'll be in good shape now with people that are reliable, that actually show up and work. I'm just wondering, is there a project graduation committee? And like, if there's a way that they need help, parent volunteers, because I think this is gonna be bigger than normal, and you could put me on that?
You're signed up.
Okay.
Yeah, back to your run.
You may be sorry.
If it's school, I'm never sorry.
Thank you, Kim.
I try. Sorry, Karen.
Bless you.
No, I was just gonna say the advisors are Ms. LaPorta and
Wait, the senior class advisors?
Yeah.
project graduation.
Oh, that's what I was
Graduation.
wondering, because
Mrs. Porter.
it's different, I
Yeah, it's Ms.
think.
Lakuter and somebody else.
Lakuter
Oh,
and,
goodness, I can't-
Schrader?
I can call. I can call. I
All right.
just figured there has to be some
Yes.
sort of a
Jen
committee.
Schrader?
And if you could, once you find that information out, gather your forces to
Okay.
help.
I'll do
That
my
would be
best.
awesome.
So they take donations? All
Um,
kinds of great stuff they do.
I feel like there's so many topics that unfortunately get forgotten about. I don't know. So one that I remembered last week after the meeting that I forgot to ask about was, can you give us any insight on an investigation with the previous workers that have made us be in this situation? Like, can you tell us anything? Like, with the roofers, or, like, I feel like know anything. Like, do we have a lawsuit against them? Are we gonna is the school district gonna get some money back? Like, some sort of retribution? I don't even know if you can comment. I just feel like I have no clue.
All right, if you're referring to litigation or any legal actions having to do with our past roofers,
Yes.
the only thing that I can tell you is that there was a meeting Wednesday,
Yes, Wednesday.
where Mr. Williams, myself, Dr. Stevenson, Mr. Brennan, and 2 of our attorneys sat down and discussed this. That's all I can tell you.
So there's something.
That's all I can tell you.
Okay. I just feel
So
like
it's
it never.
not something we've just forgotten about.
It's been ongoing.
Yes.
I was hoping you were gonna say that, but you don't hear anything, so you just,
Right.
like, I'm curious.
Right.
And then, the roof, maybe possibly being defective in parts, is that still ongoing? Have we gotten any decision, or is it warranted?
That was
Are we okay?
also
That was-
discussed at this meeting on Wednesday with our lawyers.
So you guys are on it? Okay. Just curious. I think that's it, I might come back,
Okay.
but thank you all
Thank
for
you,
your
Kim.
hard work and your dedication.
Thanks, Kim.
You've already had your shot.
Yeah, I know, I'll wait.
Twice.
Yeah, Rick Miller of the Sandpaper. First of all, I want to start with a little humor that you'll appreciate. The New Jersey Press Association Awards dinner was Thursday. I'm proud to announce the Sandpaper was picked by the Press Association of North Carolina as the best paper in the state. And I'm also proud to announce that I won the most awards of anybody at the Sandpaper, thanks to Pine Ladies. I won first place and second place for leads, best opening sentences. Second place was Pinelands High School is literally screwed up and closed down. And first place was Sex Etc. Might soon become Sex X at Pinelands Regional. And the judge said, sex used twice in the first sentence, how do you get better than that? So, now on to serious stuff. What's the status of the shared services agreement?
Oh, good point.
Yes, it is a good point. All right, I think I made this clear to everybody on the board that the shared service agreement has been approved by the Executive County Superintendent, and that now has been sent to the Commissioner of Education. Once we receive the approval from the Commissioner of Education, then we can approve it.
Okay.
So that's where we are.
Very good. Yeah, really, it's like, why isn't something said about that? Let's see. We're talking about the drop in student population. It was mentioned again with the budget. Of course, last year we went over, for months, over how big that drop was.
Yes,
It
we
turned
did.
out that we were using, and Mr. Brennan and the figures that he put in the school website were a year later than the ones that Mrs. Ernst was using. So that explained the discrepancy. But in general, probably Dr. Stevenson could answer this. Has there been a further decline this year in the school
I think
population?
we're remaining steady.
Okay.
If, it may swing, a little bit here and there, but I think we're pretty much the same as we were the last time I looked.
Okay.
You mean for next year?
Yeah, well, next year, it's an estimate again, so we're about the same. The incoming 7th grade class is, I think, virtually the same size, if not, I'm not even sure if it's a little bit bigger than the one we have now.
Okay.
Okay?
And this newsletter that you were talking about, when will that be up online?
It is.
It is now?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on the link on the homepage.
Okay.
Yep. Just as a community information update. A community update, yeah.
That's it, and I want to thank you for giving me a story idea in the future, not just school libraries, but all libraries. How did they decide how books get purged? Because sometimes the stuff I see getting thrown out, my girlfriend used to work for the town of Toms River right next to the main branch. And she called me up one day and said, get up here with a pickup truck. They threw out the entire Harvard shelf of knowledge. It's like 6 feet of books, I mean, just in small, very small print, but they have like 2,000 classics in that. They threw the whole thing out. It was just amazing, so. And I got back from Carrie, and that was great. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
So you got a Harvard education for free.
It's just amazing that they threw that out. Like you said, you know, some people don't check it out, but damn, what a resource.
I wanted to speak a little bit more with the PLA, because it seemed like there was a little bit of confusion and not understanding it. And I wanted to make sure that you guys, as well as the public, understood. I mean, obviously I'm for PLA. I've always been union. It doesn't mean that all of the non-union are bad. There's some fantastic people even in this town that are non-union that are very good. What it does mean is that with the unions, everybody that you get, and some of them might be not great, but they all are trained, drug tested, safety tested. They have certifications, so you're going to get a better percentage, and at least you know what you got, and you have some place to turn. Where with the non-union, you could get some great guys right from town, but right next to them, who knows what you get. And what happens a lot with when you don't go with the PLA and you do prevailing wage, you're ending up where, and I would say quite a bit of them, the contractor themselves will, and I've seen it done, will pocket the difference. They'll hire you to work, and they'll be like, all right, you're gonna get prevailing wage, but you owe me $1,000 a week to work on this job. So they're getting nothing, and the contractor's getting rich. And now you picture how desperate a guy is that's giving that money back. He's not very good because he can't hold the job down anywhere else. The guys that I watched on the roof, I mean, I was appalled. I honestly was. I stood out there and I was like, look at these guys. And I'm sorry, she's not here to yell at me and I can't get sued. But that's just
I
a little
will
bit
warn you that anything you say you can be held responsible for.
Yes, well, I have pictures to back myself up. Anywho, thank you. But yeah, I just wanted to clear that up a little bit, and I wanted to make sure there was no misconception with the 6 people watching. You know, we're not picking on people, you know, that are hardworking on either side of the aisle and such. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Anybody else? Okay, then moving on to board forum. Betty Ann, I'm going to start with you this week.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, you're
Thank
welcome.
you guys for coming out. It's always nice to hear from the public. And have a good night.
Same thing. Thank you, everybody, for coming and watching.
Yes, and watching. Mr. Kubricki.
Yeah, I want to follow up on the discussion at the last board forum about perception. And at the last board forum, try to make the point that our academic achievement at Pinelands with respect to the PARCC scores in high school, you know, were surpassed those in our area. They surpassed all the schools in our area, 8, 9 schools. Fortunately, Mr. Miller wasn't here.
I saw it on video. There'll be a story in this month's.
Okay, thank you. I think we got to build on that perception, though, because you say something over and over and over and over again, and then people finally get it in their head. And I think one thing to build on that perception that we need to do, a lot of times you'll see in the paper when classes graduate, they will say, graduates awarded $10 million in college scholarships. I've never seen that for Pinelands. I think we could easily give all the seniors a little form. What schools have you been accepted to? And list every scholarship amount that you have received. So, and then we can total up those scholarship things, and then we can say Pinelands students receive so much money in scholarships. And it's not going to take much effort just to pass out a little paper that says, tell us, you know, not where you're going, but just, you know, which schools have given you money to go, you know, and how much money you're getting from each of those schools. I know we have another person going to Annapolis, which right there is over 500,000 in scholarships. He probably got other scholarships too. So that one person probably has over $1 million of scholarship himself, and I think we got to do that. and we gotta do that soon, and then come graduation time, we gotta publicize that and get that perception, just keep building and building and building about how great we are.
Thank you, Mr. Kubricki. Is that something the guidance department can easily do? I don't wanna add extra work, but they're the ones that are basically keeping track of our kids, that are going to college and the scholarships.
They do it at scholarship night, but I guess it's not getting out there the way that it should. I agree with you 1,000,000%. I do know that they do discuss that at scholarship night, how much our students have received, some of the places our students are going. But we should take advantage of that and get it out there for all the public to see.
Thank you, Mr. Kubricki. Karen?
Yep, and I'll build on that. I think not only as far as going on to college, I think we do have some good other programs and resources here. So getting a positive message out there, I think, is important. I think there's some research behind, I think it's actually 7 times you have to say and reinforce things before it sinks in. So you definitely have to repeat that. I was just going to add about our good news about our shared superintendent. So Sue had already shared that. So I'll just say thank you all for coming.
Mr. Williams?
Thank you all for coming. Jamie, thank you for your comments. You're absolutely correct. And other than that, I would like to reiterate what my colleagues have said. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bonnicky?
I have nothing to add at this time.
Okay. Christie?
Thank you.
Mrs. Chambers?
Yeah, Mr. Mellerup, thank you for sharing what you did on your newspaper, and congratulations on your awards. But I want to thank you even further for some of the articles that you do write about Pinelands that are positive, because you're one of the few papers, the free circulating papers, that actually does that. Which brings up my next point. There is a paper circulating out there called the Pine Barrens Tribune, or Pinelands Tribune, that I've been told is actually being housed, or is, in our main offices. And I question whether we want to continue to do that, because some of the articles I've read lately are very negative. The last one was about the fire alarm, okay, that we had to exit the building, and it was raining, yes. It was a very negative article. And I really question, do we really want to have that circulation in our main offices if they're not going to present anything that's positive in any way? Because everything I see is always negative. And if they have to come across the county line to get a story, I find that pretty pathetic, because they are Burlington County resource. But anyway, Mr. Miller, thank you for some of the articles that you do write for us, because I feel that you are very honest with what you write.
Some of them are bad.
They are, okay, which leads me to my last point. Dr. Stevenson, thank you for putting out that community update, because what circulated this weekend on social media was appalling, okay? We have stated many times at this board meeting what was going on, how it was going to happen, and for people to actually believe that and start stirring the pot like they did was unbelievable, unbelievable. And these are some of the same people that continue to say that this Board of Education and our administration is lying. And I find that appalling. We do not lie. Our administration does not lie. And I think we have been very transparent over the last few months. It's been very difficult. It's been very trying. We've appreciated your comments, those of you that do come. And some of your suggestions have been taken and received and put in place. But to continue to say that this district is lying is just unbelievable. And I feel that some people in this community should be ashamed of themselves, because you send your children here. I just had to say that, and I really would like to discuss further at some other time about the circulation of that newspaper being in our main office. Because if they can't write something positive, then I don't feel they should even have the space in the office provided to them. Anyway, thank those of you that did come out. Those of you that are listening, thank you. And we'll see you at our May 9th meeting. And that's all I have to say.
I don't really have a whole lot to add. I want to thank you for coming. I want to thank those of you who really do ask for the facts, and that when you get them, you know, they're put out there. So I really do appreciate that. I think Mr. Kubricki and Karen both have made an excellent point. And honestly, I'm just going to simply say this. It's going to take this community to put us back on track. So we need your help. We need your positive vibes going out there to help us. So I thank you for your consistent attendance at these meetings. And I hope you have a great night, even yours, Rick. And congratulations.
And in departing, I wanted to say if there's any Philadelphia 76ers fans up there, I'm going to go home coming from New England and watch the Celtics kick your butts.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I told you.
Thank you.
I think somebody said that about the Patriots too.
I need a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of personnel and non-bargaining negotiations. There will be no action taken. Am I right there, Cheryl? No
Motion.
action will be taken. We will simply come out and adjourn the meeting.
About how long?
I would have to defer to Dr.
Shouldn't take us too
Stevens.
long.
20
Half
minutes?
hour.
A half hour max.
Motion. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We're in executive at 7:52.
Oh my God.
Absolutely.